Hi. I'm going to show you a little trick to demonstrate how your body can best learn new movements. So you can do this too. You hold your two fists out and then you point one thumb up, one finger out, and then you switch. Switch, 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 switch. So obviously I've done that before, and if you haven't done that before, you will find that very difficult to do. The best way that you can learn how to do that is to do it as slowly as you need to get each repetition right, even if that's really frustratingly slow at first. And also to just try for a minute or so and then leave it and come back to it the next day, have another go the next day. That is far more effective as a way of learning than trying for 10 minutes straight. So if you want to see how that works, try it for a minute every day for 5 days and you'll be able to do it as fast as me. The reason that this is in a Pilates video is because it's a great demonstration of how best to help your body to learn. That's why we don't do loads and loads and loads of reps, and I don't make you do things over and over again when you're just learning them, because you'll learn them better if you just start your brain processing it and then leave it for a bit and come back to it. And I also encourage you to do the exercises really slowly so that you are able to think carefully about exactly how you're moving, so that each movement you do is right and you're reinforcing the right movements, not the wrong ones. So have a think about that as you go through the exercises you do. Okay, now we're going to add something to the Pilates breathing that we now understand. We're going to think about the semi-supine position and do a pelvic tilt. So the semi-supine position is the position you were in for learning your Pilates breathing. I'm going to give you a bit more detail about it now. So points to note: I've got my feet flat on the floor, I've got my knees bent, and I am controlling the gap between my lower back and the floor. And I'll explain to you how to do that. So when you're doing most of the exercises, I'll ask you to have your arms down at your side. That would be the normal semi-supine position. I'm going to move this arm out of the way a bit just so you can see what's going on. So you need to get your lower back to a point where you can just get a squashed hand between your lower back and the floor. Now the way that you control that is by moving your pelvis. Now just so that you know what I'm talking about, your pubic bone is at the bottom of your pelvis when you're standing up. So if I push my pubic bone towards the sky, then that's what it looks like. And if I push my pubic bone towards the ground, that's what it looks like. So when I push my pubic bone towards the sky, you can see that gap closes up. That gap between my lower back and the floor closes up and I can't get my hand in there. And if I push my pubic bone towards the ground, then that gap opens up there. And now I can get more than just a squashed hand in. So you need to adjust where your pelvis is so that your lower back is in the right spot to just be able to get a squashed hand in. So there we are, and that's the neutral position there. So that is a semi-supine position. Okay. So I'm back in the semi-supine position. I've got my feet hip distance apart. I've got my knees parallel, and they're not falling in towards each other. They're not falling out away from each other. And I've got that little gap between my lower back and the floor. Pelvic tilt is where I inhale, and I'm using Pilates breathing, remember, so remember that drawing in of your lower abdominal muscles on the exhale. So I inhale through my nose, and then as I exhale, I'm drawing my lower abs in, and I'm tilting my pelvis as far as I can, pubic bone towards the sky. I'm not pushing down on my feet to do that. This is all from the muscles in my body, and I'm trying to pull my tummy in at the same time. And I inhale to go back to where I started. So go as far as you can without pushing down on your feet. You won't get past about there. That's okay. And inhale to go back to where you started. So I do about 6 of those. And then you can take it further. So I go as far as I can, just tilting my pelvis, not pushing down on my feet. And then I start to push down on my feet and I take my pelvis off the floor. That's it. I've still got my whole back on the floor, so there's a big tilt here. And then I inhale as I put my pelvis back down and then untilt. So I do 4 of those and then you can go further. So I'm going to tilt, then push down on my feet to pick up. I'm going to start peeling up my spine. But I'm tilting as much as I can there so that I'm curving my spine off the floor, and I'll go about halfway up my back. There we are, and then inhale back down. Do about 4 of those, and then you can see how far you can go, remembering that you have to keep the tilt that way. As soon as it feels like you're having to go that way instead, when you're up there, that's too far. You've got to keep the tilt that way with your pelvis. So you can peel off as far as you can, keeping the tilt that way, pulling your tummy in. So I inhale, and then begin the exhale, pull in my lower abs. Now peel, 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 peel. And I can get to about there. And then I'm going to inhale to go back down. And I'm going to start by thinking about sinking my lower ribs there, because that will help me curve my upper back onto the floor. So I will have just done an exhale to get there, so then I'm going to inhale back down. So I can't labour this point enough, right? This is not a flat back going bang, bang, bang. It's a curve of your spine, laying down and then peeling up. So you've got to think about that sequential movement of your spine in this exercise. So once you've worked up to going all the way up like that, that's as far as you're going to go. I'll talk you through it while you do some pelvic tilt and shoulder bridge. Let's find that semi-supine position, feet on the floor, knees bent, lying down on your back, and little gap between your lower back and the floor where you can just get a squashed hand in. For the first couple, we're just going to tilt the pelvis. The pelvis isn't going to leave the floor. So you exhale, pull your lower abs in, and push your pubic bone towards the sky by pulling your tummy in, and your lower back will squash into the floor. And inhale to come back down. Next one, same again. Make sure that you're not pushing down on your feet to achieve that tilt. Exhale as you come up, using the muscles in your torso to achieve that tilt. And then inhaling to come back down. This time going a bit further. Exhale, pull your lower abs in, tilt your pelvis again, same as before. But then when you get to the end of that tilt, push down on your feet to take the weight of your pelvis off the floor. Then control your pelvis back down onto the floor and untilt your pelvis all on an inhale. Same again. Exhale as you tilt your pelvis without pushing down on your feet, and then push down on your feet to take your pelvis off the floor. And then begin the inhale as you then lay your pelvis back down on the floor and then untilt to get back to where you started. Exhale, tilt your pelvis, push down on your feet, take your pelvis off the floor, and then keep going as you peel your spine off the floor. So it's a sequential movement of your spine. There we are, inhale back down. So you get that nice sequential movement in your spine. Same again. Exhale as you tilt the pelvis, and then push down on your feet to lift your pelvis off the floor. And keep exhaling as you peel off. And then inhale as you sequentially lay the spine back down on the floor. And then eventually take the weight off your feet to let your pelvis back down and untilt. I'm going to show you a Pilates sit-up. So I get into the semi-supine position. Got my feet flat on the floor, so my knees bent, got my knees hip distance apart, my feet hip distance apart, so my legs are parallel there. Got my little gap between the lower back and the floor where I can just get a squashed hand in. I've got my arms down at the sides. I'm going to put my hands behind my head for the sit-up. I'm going to inhale through my nose, begin the exhale, and of course I pull my lower abs in and engage my pelvic floor, and then I exhale as I come up. And then I inhale as I go back down. So there's a few things I need you to think about which you can't just see. First is that as I come up, I'm pulling my tummy down because those muscles there want to bulge up towards the sky as I curl up in the sit-up. Second thing is that if I don't think about it, then as I come up in the sit-up, my pelvis will tilt like this. And I really don't want that to happen. So what I have to do is I feel where my pelvis is currently making contact with the floor. I feel it through my pelvis. And then as I come up in the sit-up, I'm deliberately pushing that point into the ground, which will let me come up a bit further before my pelvis starts to tilt. So when you're coming up in this sit-up, you can come up as high as you like, so long as your pelvis doesn't start going that way. Okay, so I inhale, and then I exhale as I come up. I'm holding my tummy down, and I'm pushing my pelvis into the floor so it doesn't tilt that way. And then I inhale back down. Now we're going to go through some reps of sit-ups. I'll talk you through them and do them with you while you do them too. First thing we want to do is get into the right starting position. We want to be semi-supine. That means feet flat on the floor, knees bent, lying on your back. Start with your arms down at your sides while you get your lower back in the right place. So a little gap between your lower back and the floor. And then you can put your hands behind your head. I'm beginning the inhale. And then as I start the exhale, I pull my lower abs down. And then I continue the exhale as I bring my head and shoulders up into a curl. I stop before my pelvis starts to tilt. And then I inhale as I slowly go back down again. And then because I've just inhaled to come down, I'm ready to exhale to go up again. Begin the exhale before you move, pulling the lower abs in. And then exhale as you curl all the way up. Then inhale as you control back down. Exhale, pull the lower abs in, continue to exhale to curl up, then inhale back down at the same speed, controlling all the way down. Resist the temptation to come too high, making sure that your pelvis doesn't start to tilt at the top of the curl up, and also make sure that your lower abs are held down towards the floor. They'll want to bulge up towards the sky. Next one, let's exhale to come up. And then inhale to come back down. Next one, let's exhale up. And then inhale back down. Last one, begin the exhale, pull the lower abs in and curl up. Then inhale through the nose as you control all the way back down. And relax. Hi, I'm going to teach you the clam. You do this one on your side. I'm going to use the edge of the mat to line up my heels and my bum and my shoulder. Put my top hand on the ground there, and I've got my knees bent. So what I'm going to do is from here, I'm going to inhale. As I begin the exhale, I'm going to pull my tummy in. I'm also going to be trying to pull my midriff there a little bit away from the floor, and my underneath shoulder a little bit towards my underneath hip. So there's a connection there on the underside of my body. And as I exhale, I'm pushing my feet together as hard as I can to lift up that top knee. And then I inhale as it goes back down. Now, there's some things that you have to think about here. If I were teaching you and I was in the room with you, I would put my hands between your feet and I would check that you really are squashing my hand as hard as you can. So that makes sure that you're using the right muscles to lift that top knee. The next thing to think about is, I might also stand right behind you with my leg just behind your hips there to check that your hip's not rocking back. So if I lift too far, then my hip rocks back. You can see it's moved there. So you've got to try and figure out how far can I lift without my hip rocking back. You can deliberately push your hip this way to stop it rocking back, and that'll get you a little bit further before it rocks, but it will eventually rock. So a good trick when you're learning this one is to do it with something behind you. Like you could do it with your hips against the wall there, so you can just check when your hip starts pushing into the wall, you know that you've gone too far. So you can learn where the limit is in your body. Obviously you do that exercise on the other side as well. And I would do, sorry, the sun's right in my eyes. I would do 6 of those on each side. We're going to do some repetitions of the clam. I'll talk you through them while you do them. First off, lie on your side, heels, bum and shoulder in a line, and top hand on the floor in front of you, hips stacked one above the other, knees bent and shoulders stacked as well. Inhale to prepare, then exhale as you draw your lower abs in and squeeze your feet together as hard as you can to bring that top leg up. Stop before your top hip starts to rock back, and then inhale as you smoothly lower back down again. Exhale, engage the lower abs, squeeze the feet together to bring the knee up, and then inhale as you go back down. Begin the exhale slightly before the lift and be pulling your lower abs in as you bring the knee up, and inhale as you control back down. Begin the exhale and the pull in of the lower abs before you start to lift the leg. Stop before the hip rocks back, inhale as you come back down. Make sure you're squeezing the feet together as hard as you can to bring that knee up. Come back down at the same speed as you lifted. Exhale, squeeze the feet together to lift. Inhale as you lower. Now you'll need to switch sides and set yourself up on the other side. Obviously I'm cheating here and doing the same side again, but you'll switch over. Lie on your side, heels, bum and shoulder in a line, and top hand on the floor in front of you, hips stacked one above the other, knees bent and shoulders stacked as well. I'd just like to explain that when you do switch sides, you will feel it's different, even though you're doing the same exercise. Even though we're all very symmetrical, it will feel different when you're doing an exercise on the other side. It might be easier, it might be harder, and that's the same for all the side exercises we do in Pilates. Inhale to prepare, then exhale as you draw your lower abs in and squeeze your feet together as hard as you can to bring that top leg up. Stop before your top hip starts to rock back, and then inhale as you smoothly lower back down again. Exhale, engage the lower abs, squeeze the feet together to bring the knee up, and then inhale as you go back down. Begin the exhale slightly before the lift and be pulling your lower abs in as you bring the knee up, and inhale as you control back down. Begin the exhale and the pull in of the lower abs before you start to lift the leg. Stop before the hip rocks back, inhale as you come back down. Make sure you're squeezing the feet together as hard as you can to bring that knee up. Come back down at the same speed as you lifted. Exhale, squeeze the feet together to lift. Inhale as you lower. This exercise is called the reverse clam. If you've already done the clam, then this will feel like a familiar position to start in. I'm on my side, I've lined up my bum and my heels and my shoulder on the edge of the mat. My top hand's on the floor. And what I'm going to do, I'm making sure I've got this connection between my underneath shoulder and my underneath hip. They're pulling towards each other a little bit. As I exhale, I'm going to be pulling my lower abs in, and I'm also going to be trying to pull my midriff just slightly away from the floor. And my top hand's on the floor in front of me. I inhale. As I exhale, I'm going to push my knees together as hard as I can to lift this foot up. And then I inhale to go back down. So, as with the clam, if I try and lift that leg too far, I'm going to rock the hip forwards. You can see I'm exaggerating it, but you can see what I mean. So I've rolled forward. So you have to You have to only go as far as you can with that foot without this hip rocking forwards. You'll have to learn where your limit is. You might have to look, you might do it by feel, you might ask someone to watch you, you might video yourself, or you could start with something just behind your back that you can feel, and then you know if you pull away from it, then you've rocked. So just like the clam, I would do 6 on one side and 6 on the other side. I'll talk you through the reverse clam while you do it. So get onto your side and line up your heels and your bum and your shoulder on the edge of the mat, top hand on the floor in front of you. So then we're going to exhale as you squeeze the knees together as hard as you can to lift that foot up. Stop before the top hip starts to roll forwards, and then inhale as you control back down again. As you've just inhaled to come down, you're ready to exhale to take the next one back up. Squeezing the knees together to bring it up, not letting that hip rock forwards, and then inhaling as you lower back down. In these side exercises, you can start to think about your side posture and get your underneath shoulder pulling towards your underneath hip a little bit to keep that side working. At all times during the reverse clam, you want to make sure you've got your top shoulder directly above your underneath shoulder and your top hip directly above your underneath hip. We'll do 2 more. Exhale as you squeeze the knees together to bring the top foot up. And then inhale as you come back down. And then exhale as you squeeze again. And bring that top foot up. Inhale as you take the same speed as you come back down. Now, of course, because this is a sided exercise, you've got all this to do on the other side. I'm going to cheat and do it on the same side and talk you through it on the other side for you. So switch over, get yourself aligned on the other side. Heels, bum and shoulder in line, and then you're ready to start with the top hand on the floor. Bear in mind that in all sided exercises, people find that one side is easier than the other. Don't be surprised if it's not the side you expect. Okay, so same as before. Inhale to prepare, then exhale, pull your lower abs in, squeeze the knees together to lift the foot up, and then inhale as you control back down. Same again, make sure you're really squeezing those knees together. If you're in a class, I might put my hand between your knees to make sure that it was being really squashed as you lifted the foot up. And again, exhale as you come up, and then inhale as you come back down, making the downward movement as controlled and smooth as the upward one was. So you begin the exhale and the pull in of the lower abs, keep exhaling as you lift, and then inhale as you lower. And as the muscles start to get tired, you have to concentrate harder on keeping that control and keep lifting to the same height without the hip rolling forwards. And then on to the last one. Exhale as you lift. Inhale smooth and controlled as you lower back down. I'm going to show you kittens, which starts on all fours. Okay, so remember that all fours position. I've got my knees hip distance apart. Then I move my body either backwards or forwards so my hips are directly above my knees. And I put my hands directly under my shoulders. And then I'm looking in front of my hands in the center line. Then I think about my lower back. I want to start with that little dip in my lower back, like that. You might have to film yourself or look in a mirror to make sure you've got that little dip. Be aware that just because it feels like you're in the right place, it doesn't mean you actually are. And you might have to relearn what it feels like to be in the correct position. So do find a way to look. And then kittens itself is inhale. And then as I exhale, pull my tummy in and I push my pubic bone towards the floor. And then I inhale to go back to where I started. And then exhale, push my pubic bone towards the floor. Inhale to go back to where I started. And because I'm deliberately pulling my lower abs in on the exhale, that actually feels like quite hard work. Otherwise that movement would not feel like anything at all. So do make sure that you're working your lower abs there. I'll talk you through it while you do kittens. We'll start on all fours. Knees hip distance apart, hips directly above knees, hands directly under shoulders. Little dip in your lower back, and then you're ready to start. I begin the exhale and the pulling of the lower abs. As I continue to exhale, I push my pubic bone towards the floor to tilt my pelvis towards the floor, and my lower back will flatten out and then bulge up towards the sky. Then I'm going to inhale to return back to where I started. So then I'm ready to exhale to pull my lower abs in and tilt again. And then inhale to return back to where I started again. As you learn this exercise, you'll become aware that you're controlling the shape of your lower back by thinking about moving your pelvis. Like lots of exercises in Pilates, it becomes hard work because you have to pull your lower abs in as you're doing the movement. Otherwise it would be quite easy, but you should feel this quite strongly in your lower abs. Exhale as you push your pubic bone towards the floor to tilt. Then inhale to return back to where you started. And again, begin the exhale and the pull-in of your lower abs before you start to move. Tilt your pelvis as much as you can and then inhale to go back to where you started.